After 11 movies and a dozen or so TV shows set in the era from the late Galactic Republic to the fall of the New Republic, The Acolyte takes Star Wars live action into a new era for the first time in history. But what is this era, called the High Republic? In this video we will talk about that, giving a chronology of the era, talking about the Republic, the Jedi, the political situation in the galaxy, and the main villains of the High Republic era, as well as the main events before the Acolyte. The oldest and wisest Jedi among us have begun to speak of our current age as the most successful in the history of the Republic. It is true that this era of prosperity is marked by a strong partnership between the government of the Republic and Jedi Order. However, the harmony of recent decades has also marked a closer relationship between the Jedi and the citizens of the galaxy who we have sworn to protect. Every Jedi working across the stars is helping to spread the light further than ever before. Jedi Master Harley Cogra, 230 BBY. The High Republic era is a term used to describe what would later be considered the best days of the Galactic Republic's democratic reign over the Star Wars galaxy. Beginning around 500 BBY and lasting until 100 BBY, the era occupies most of the second half of the millennium of relative peace between the defeat of the Sith at the fall of the Old Republic and the rise of the Galactic Empire in 19 BBY. The age, content-wise, is divided into three separate phases of books, comic books, audio dramas, and now a live-action television series. Phase 1 begins in 232 BBY, exactly 200 years before the Phantom Menace, and it ends in 230 BBY, lasting 3 years. Phase 2 jumps back to 382 BBY, 150 years earlier, and takes place over a much shorter period of time, being just 1 year long. Phase 3 then resumes where Phase 1 left off, continuing its story starting in 230 BBY. The Acolyte takes place roughly 100 years before the Phantom Menace, placing it around 132 BBY, which is nearing the tail end of the High Republic as an era, only 32 years before its formally regarded end. Where else can we start when discussing the High Republic than the Republic itself? Not much is known about the Republic pre-High Republic in Star Wars canon, but we do know that a great reformation happened 1,000 years before the Phantom Menace, and that by the time of the High Republic, the Republic had already existed for over 500 years. A lot of how the Republic functions during the High Republic is very similar to what we see in the Star Wars prequels. Senators represent sectors in the Galactic Senate and debate issues to create legislation to govern Republic space. The differences come in the effectiveness of this and the scale of the Republic. During this specific time period, new worlds are joining the Republic at a much more frequent rate, as we will discuss when describing the Republic's geography. And because this is a golden age not only of the Jedi but of the Republic, there is a lot more hope and goodwill in the functioning of this government, as opposed to the bureaucratic stagnation and corruption that has taken hold later, especially in the years leading up to the Clone Wars. The Republic's chief executive is still the Supreme Chancellor, limited to 2 4-year terms in office. The main Chancellor seen during the High Republic era is Chancellor Lina So of Dagi, being featured in phases 1 and 3. So was a charismatic and popular Chancellor who campaigned on a very heightened sense of Republic unity and expansion into the Outer Rim. She was known for her large-scale government projects, known as Great Works, which she hoped would unite the Republic in many ways. Lina So later became well known for her persistence in tough times that occurred during her term. During Phase 2, however, there was an interesting instance when the Republic had 2 Chancellors operating at the exact same time. Chancellors Kyong Greylark, a human, and Orlan Mollo, a Quarren, campaigned together and served 2 terms, with Greylark more focused on governing from Coruscant, while Mollo was more mobile. In the 380s BBY, they revitalized expansion into the Outer Rim, specifically interested in locating and making accessible new hyperspace routes, which led to a bit of political conflict with the very wealthy hyperspace prospecting families during this period called the Great Hyperspace Rush. Not at the geographic scale seen in later centuries, the Republic during the High Republic was still expanding into space more distant from major hyperspace lanes, which were much more explored even in the Old Republic. The areas being explored during the High Republic were colloquially known as the Galactic Frontier, and communication was difficult in this period, leading to the establishment of Pathfinder teams, Republic and Jedi squads sent to explore these big chunks of the Outer Rim, with the frontier mostly consisting of the Galactic South by Phase 1. This is where a lot of major events happened during the High Republic era, including the construction of Starlight Beacon, a massive space station that allowed for faster communication in the Outer Rim and was a symbol of the Republic's efforts in the region. As more of a golden age of the Republic, the political side of the High Republic is relatively limited, besides that which involves diplomacy and the military. During this time, the Republic was much more open to decentralization, operating less strictly from Coruscant and being more willing to cooperate with and entice other smaller independent polities into joining, like the Togruta. Militarily, the Republic at this point consisted widely of the judicial forces, as seen in the Phantom Menace, who managed some parliamentary activities during the Republic's existence. However, the High Republic also featured something new called the Republic Defense Coalition, or RDC. The RDC was created out of the lack of a standing military for the Republic as a whole, and functioned as the name implies, a coalition of standing local militaries for use during crises and emergency situations. The RDC placed local planetary defense forces under the control of the Republic for limited times, which was useful, but caused questioning among some senators, who were staunchly against the Republic having a military. The opposing side also existed, however, and senators like the Celestan Tia Toon thought it didn't go far enough. Toon proposed the Defense Force program, which would establish a standing military for the Republic. This gained support, particularly during the conflicts of Phase 1, but ultimately did not pass in the Senate, showing the less militaristic nature of the galaxy at large and the Republic in particular during this period. A lot of the main events of the early High Republic involved the Republic's intervention in smaller, more regional conflicts, as is expected for an era known for its relative peace. Early on, as the Republic was still expanding itself off of the major hyperlanes, they came to manage more regional conflicts. Most of Phase 2 is centered around the Battle of Jedha, a huge conflict that happened in 382 BBY in the Holy City on Jedha, a moon that would continue to be important in the future. This conflict began at the signing of a peace treaty between two warring planets who shared a system, Irem and Irino. The two worlds were rivals and enemies, but their conflict was brought to a halt when the Prince of Irem, Fantuzen, and the Princess of Irino, Ziri Albaran, fell in love and decided to marry for peace between their worlds. Peace talks, facilitated on the world of Jedha soon after, were interrupted by a combination of those who still had grudges and the machinations of an extremist force religious group known as the Path of the Open Hand, which caused widespread riots throughout the city. This was a colossal battle, involving pretty much everyone who had any kind of presence on Jedha, and was what caused the final Standing Stone Jedi statue, the Final Protector, to fall, the results of which we can see in the Rogue One movie. Following a year of Jedi inquiry into the Path of the Open Hand, both before and after the Battle of Jedha, the Jedi decided to investigate the path at their religious compound in the Outer Rim agricultural world of Dalna. There, several groups of Jedi finally came face to face with what was known as the Nameless, beasts from a mythical planet, known only as Planet X, who fed on those sensitive to the Force. The Nameless were able to kill any Jedi, causing mass delusions, fearful visions, and the loss of the ability to use the Force, all while turning those it attacked into pillars of flaky stone. The Path, which had been continually radicalized over the previous year, used this investigation as an excuse to attack the Jedi, causing massive casualties, made worse by the Jedi being terrified and targeted by the Nameless. The bloody and intense battle led to a very large amount of casualties, of both Jedi and Path members, with the Path of the Open Hand being dissolved shortly after, and the Jedi widely covering up these atrocities. The local Dalnans blamed the Jedi for the battle, and held this grudge for generations to come. 150 years later, a large group of Outer Rim pirates, known as the Nihil, who stemmed from survivors of the Path of the Open Hand, secretly orchestrated a near collision in hyperspace with a freighter called the Legacy Run on a major route, causing it to fall apart and small bits of it to shoot out of hyperspace across the galaxy at apocalyptic speeds, known as emergencies. The disaster was widespread, causing the Jedi and RDC to deploy to save as many lives as possible. The planets affected included Hetzal, Abdalis, Eridu, Dantooine, Ringlight, Tekla, Trimont 4, Cabot, and others. The Great Disaster also temporarily degenerated the safety and usability of hyperspace, forcing the Republic to halt hyperlane travel across the Outer Rim. The Nihil took advantage of this, attacking several locations and finally revealing themselves to the Republic. Due to the hyperspace travel ban, several ships full of people had to take refuge on the Amaxine space station, where a group of stranded Jedi found 4 ancient, possibly Sith statues. Upon removing the statues, they unleashed the drengir, an ancient hive mind species of dark side plant monsters seeded across the galaxy millennia ago. The drengir hive mind was held back by the 4 statues. The Nihil took advantage of this chaos and used the Drengir crisis to their advantage to distract the Republic from its real plans. The Jedi, led by Icon Avar Kriss, eventually defeated the Drengir through an alliance with the Hutts that led to the capture of their hive mind leader, the Great Progenitor. After the end of the emergencies and the restart of Outer Rim travel and commerce, Chancellor So held the Republic Fair, another one of her great works, on the planet Valo in Lonissa City. It was meant to celebrate the end of the Great Disaster 1 year later, and the end of the Nihil threat. But they weren't really defeated. The Nihil caught wind of this and attacked the fair. They used fog, starfighters, marauders on the ground, and a communications blackout, all of which led to a slaughter. Chancellor So herself would have been assassinated if it weren't for Jedi Master Stellan Gios. This cemented the Nihil as a much more serious threat than the Republic first thought. The casualties were immense, and much of the destruction was widely publicized after the attack was over. Soon after, the Jedi found the Nihil base on the planet Grizzle and launched a counterattack and rescue mission, looking to reclaim the captured Master Loden Greatstorm. Secretive Nihil leader Marchion Ro, of the mysterious Evereni species, then unleashed the Leveler, the nameless creature of his ancestors in the Path of the Open Hand, turning Greatstorm to dust. After Valo, the Republic went on the offensive, trying to stamp out the Nihil threat however they could. However, with Marchion Ro's nameless terror, the Jedi were lost and confused. Avar Kriss decided to mount her own attack on the Nihil's base, in a part of the galaxy called No Space, using the Jedi Order's cruiser, the Ataraxia. Thus she abandoned her duty as the Marshal of Starlight Beacon, leaving another Jedi Master, Stellan Gios, in charge. Shortly after, the Nihil mounted their largest attack yet, placing covert agents to take down Starlight Beacon, while several Nameless terrorized and killed the Jedi on board. A large battle took place, while Jedi attempted to keep the many citizens on board calm, but an explosion separated the station for good, crashing it down onto the planet Irem. Civilian craft from all over the galaxy arrived to lend a hand, but the station was still crashing directly over the capital of Irem. Stellan Gios and his childhood friend Elzar Mann attempted to save the station, but had no luck. Gios decided to remain on board the falling station, using its thrusters to make it land in the ocean instead of on top of the city, saving countless lives and dying in the process. A mass cleanup and rescue effort began after this, in which many Jedi were lost, and few were discovered to have survived. One Jedi Padawan, Bel Zetifar, even joined a fishing crew for months, hoping to find his Wookiee friend Bayaga, and eventually did, deep in a cave under the ocean. It was then that Marchion Ro revealed himself to the galaxy, taking credit for the fall of Starlight, while the Nihil attacked key sites in the galaxy, with one battle even taking place on Corellia. In his victory, Marchion Ro worked with Nihil scientists to create devices called Storm Seeds, which prevented all hyperspace travel within their vicinity. The Evereni then activated a gigantic network of them all at the same time to section a part of the Outer Rim as Nihil territory. This stranded countless civilians and Jedi in enemy territory under Marchion's control, with no way of communicating with the outside galaxy. The Nihil ran rampant, governing their own small section of the galaxy at that time. During the High Republic, the Jedi were much more involved in the galaxy. The Jedi temples were located not only on Coruscant, but with smaller temples dotting planets all over the galaxy. Some Jedi outpost and temple locations were Takodana, Mon Cala, Valo, Naboo, and more. The Jedi interacted much more with the citizens of the Republic during this era, and were more heroes of the people than they were by the time of the prequels. The Jedi Order still worked closely with the Republic, but made sure to be wary of military involvement. After the fall of Starlight Beacon and the proliferation of the Nameless, however, the Jedi Order as a whole retreated to Coruscant and was never again as widespread as before. In the earlier days of the High Republic, the Jedi were very involved with the Republic's exploration efforts, with a master and apprentice being a usual part of a Pathfinder team, sent into the unknown to explore and tell uncontacted worlds about the Republic. Present in Jedha was a council called the Convocation of the Force, representing the various Force-based religions in the galaxy. The Jedi were joined by the ancient Force-worshipping Church of the Force and the Disciples of the Wills, the related but separate stoic warrior-like Guardians of the Wills, the mystical Falanasi, the martial arts-focused Matukai, the plant-controlling naturalist Lonto, and the wizard-like Sorcerers of Tund. The previously mentioned Path of the Open Hand was created on Dalna as a peaceful organization by a runaway Guardian of the Wills, dedicated to revering the Force but never using it. The Path believed that using the Force for one's will was removing it from somewhere else in the galaxy where it was needed, and that Force users were responsible for all natural disasters and unnatural deaths in the universe. The Path of the Open Hand became villainous under the leadership of Alessia Zeveron, also known as the Mother. Zeveron was zealously anti-Jedi after they took her sister Olivia into the Order but left her behind. She came to the Path as a refugee, taking over the organization due to her prominent Force visions, which the group revered. After manipulating the Path to the extent that their pacifist ways were forgotten, and to the point where Jedi hatred was so strong that the Battle of Dalna took place, Alessia used her nameless creatures, killing many Jedi, until she was defeated and killed not by a Jedi, but by a young and enthusiastic Evereni Path member named Marda Ro. Ro and her descendants went on to take the remnants of the Path and reform them into the Nihil on board the Path's starship, the Gaze Electric. The Nihil became a brutal and bloodthirsty anti-Republic and anti-Jedi group brewing in the Outer Rim, waiting for their revenge. They developed a reverence of storms, as they constantly covered the Evereni homeworld, and Nihil leadership was organized like a storm, with Marchion Ro being the Eye of the Nihil, supervising his Tempest runners, who supervised storms over clouds and lowest strikes. The Nihil were very dependent on their technology, being particularly advanced in their usage of hyperspace, due to an old hyperspace savant named Marisan Teka, who was able to plot hyperspace paths off the main routes, allowing for covert and fast travel throughout the galaxy. This was only possible with a piece of Nihil experimental technology called a Path Engine. Throughout the High Republic, we can very clearly see the Jedi becoming less and less involved in the galaxy. Once so entwined into the Republic's efforts in a healthy way, the Jedi, after the conflict with the Nihil and the Occlusion Zone, became much more secluded, focusing on their order above all else, and being less symbols of light and more symbols of the Republic. The military creation debate also shows up in the High Republic, and justifiably so, as the Nihil were a dire threat, especially with the Occlusion Zone in the Outer Rim. Speaking of the Outer Rim, the High Republic also seriously emphasized the Outer Rim's disconnect from the core, despite the Republic's best effort, which led to the era of the Trade Federation's rise to power and the eventual coming of the Confederacy of Independent Systems and the Clone Wars. We will talk about the High Republic and Acolyte more in the coming weeks, so make sure you have subscribed and pressed the bell button. Please consider liking and sharing, as it helps immensely, and don't forget to comment. We'll try to read and respond to every comment, as we want to know what you think about this video and which videos you hope to see in the future. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.